the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Welcome back to the AV Profession, the show by and about AV professionals. I'm your host, Taylor Ryan Moore, and with me today is another new guest. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Thor?
How you guys doing? I'm Thor Lipscomb. I am an audiovisual programmer currently situated in Tampa, Florida, the Tampa Bay area, working for Power Design.
Welcome, Thor. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Just of course, we had Hurricane Ian come through last week.
Yeah.
Left quite a bit of devastation. Thankfully, it wasn't too bad in the Tampa area. Kind of shifted its direction, but still just dealing with the influx of projects and work and trying to get back into the flow of things, man. So I'm good. I'm excited to be here. So thank you all for having me. Looking forward to some good discussion today.
Yeah, good. I just wanted to make sure that everything was good. I know the hurricanes were happening. I was like, I hope he's still able to come and everything's worked out and you catch up on work. So that's all good. So before we get into all the fun stuff about the AV profession and what you do, I do have a fun icebreaker question. I am a fan of those. So from our talks earlier, I know you have a background in music, and so I'm always curious to hear what other people are listening to, what are their suggestions. So I have to ask, what's the last album or song you listened to, and where were you when you listened to it?
That's a great question. Crazily enough, and it's kind of a recent kind of thing, but I've kind of gotten into country quite a bit.
Okay.
I know that, yeah, I know that's weird for some people, but country, man, I think it's one of those few genres where I think they still write incredible ballads. And they're telling incredible stories. And my brother kind of put me on that wave back with like Luke Combs and some of his records, and I was like, man, these joints are beautiful, So it kind of started that way, and then recently, man, just kind of been expanding the horizons and listening to more and more. But I know he's kind of a controversial character at times, but Morgan Wallen has kind of been uh, a guy I've been listening to quite often lately. But if I'm listening to albums, honestly, I go even further back. So I'm going back to like Babyface. Babyface is my favorite artist of all time. So all his greatest hits. I mean, I can't even give you a specific album. I just anything Babyface, man. Like that's just a yearly listen. But yeah, like I said, just kind of randomly, country's kind of been the thing. Yeah, as of late.
I feel that too. I feel like I go through seasons of like digging into different genres besides sticking to like the
Yeah.
normal stuff I listen to. And as of late, it's been a lot of like electronic dance and house music, a lot of drum and bass, a lot of the uns music, the pump up,
Exactly.
just something to like get the energy going in
Right.
the morning. You're gonna go in for a workout, a good pump in, or just pre-gaming for a party. Music like that. That's been my wave. But good country. Any other suggestions for the country?
Uh, like I said, Luke is amazing, man. Luke Combs, lately has been my number one guy. I just think, like I said, that he's got this song called "Better." It's kind of an acoustic song, and it's just, man, it's been my anthem here lately. Um, but yeah, I think just being in music, being in audio for as long as I have, of course, I was kind of siloed off and doing a lot of R&B, hip hop for a while, but then going through like a formal program and expanding
Mm-hmm.
uh, my repertoire there, and having to kind of listen to different genres, like my appreciation for music overall really grew. So yeah, man, like I said, lately that's just kind of been the wave. Yeah.
Nice. Well, speaking of programs and getting more into the background of music stuff, what is your sort of background before getting into AV? I know we talked before that like AV, like most people, wasn't like the top thing on your list. Like I'm going to be in the AV industry out the jump. So what is your background before getting into being a programmer?
Gotcha. So before I kind of even got into the world of AV or even know what AV was, I grew up singing a lot. So I was in chorus from first grade to eighth grade. So singing was kind of a
Mm-hmm.
passion of mine, music in general. And I want to say around that time, around seventh and eighth grade, I had this birthday party that I ended up going to, and it was a karaoke party. Now, I didn't necessarily know all the logistics of it. I just knew we were going to be going to a studio. It was a karaoke birthday, so I decided to do Usher. I had my little friends that were background dancers, things of that nature. And
Right, right.
The person whose party it was happened to be the niece of super producer Dallas Austin. So, he produced Chili. He found Sammy. Did a lot of stuff for a lot of people. Um, so ended up doing the performance. He kind of took note, and that was kind of the beginning of this music journey for me. And ended up kind of securing this shadowing type internship, if you will. But more shadow based at the time, and got to see a lot of things. Was exposed to a lot, so ended up getting invited out to Sammy's like comeback music video for "You Should Be My Girl." I met Lloyd. The movie ATL, I got invited to the premiere.
Ooh,
So
that's a
yeah, I got to
classic.
meet
It's a classic
Ti,
movie.
Lauren London, everybody, man, and it was an incredible experience. So, um, was kind of trying to get more into that singing musical space, and at the time, having a single mom, contracts, and industry stuff, there's just certain levels of uncomfortability that was there. So, unfortunately, nothing really came of that opportunity. But she encouraged me at that time, like, hey, do it for yourself, And so that's kind of the beginning of my audio journey. Ended up getting like a little USB mic and Elisa's USB mixer from some local music store, man. And what I ended up finding was the more I was recording myself, etc., I liked being behind the computer even more than being behind the mic. I was kind of like, the way I could manipulate sounds and things of that nature. And then I had friends that were doing, everybody at that age wants to be in music in some capacity. So started recording for them, $20 a song, things of that nature. And that really solidified for me, what I wanted to do. So um, going from that all throughout high school and being in that mixing space, that audio space, going into college, I very much so knew what I wanted to do. I was diehard going to do audio, whether that was at Full Sail, Middle Tennessee State. I was very invested in looking into programs. My mom, very much so not into that. Unfamiliar,
Right.
right? It's audio. Like, what is that? I'm used to the traditional civil engineering, mechanical engineering, things of that nature. And so audio engineering to her was just it was a cool hobby, but I don't really see the career path. you know.
She was like, it's a foreign
But that
concept. I
was
don't see
it's a
the
foreign
yeah,
concept. It was a foreign concept. So that's
yeah.
where the beginning of my programming life kind of came in. So we kind of had to meet in the middle. Like, you don't have to go hardcore engineering, but you can't do audio. Can we settle on computer science? And so that was kind of the beginning of my programming journey, which didn't last too long, but we'll get into that.
I guess what kind of work were you doing before you joined the industry? Whether how did college sort of came about? Like
Mm,
with the computer science degree, what did that sort of look like?
gotcha.
How did we get to computer science to now doing sound engineering?
Right. So coming into the computer science program, like I said, I knew what I wanted to do, and computer science wasn't it, and I learned that very, very early on. So I want to say, like my freshman, beginning of sophomore year, maybe I had in my mind tanked enough programs and exams for me to feel like, okay, this is not my gift. But audio was very much so something I was still doing. So even though I wasn't in the audio major, I go over to what was the Brooks Center at Clemson University, and I would, still sit in on a lot of their audio classes, whatever I could take and not be a major, I was taking. So I was finding myself in the studios of the Brooks Center far more than I was in the computer lab. So unbeknownst to my mom at the time, I just kind of took a chance on myself, auditioned and got into the audio program my sophomore year. And I was very fortunate to get into the program. It's a competitive program. They take 12 kids. And especially coming in between that freshman and sophomore space, I'm competing with people that are already in the program and freshmen that are trying to come in. So, again, was very fortunate. Ended up getting their talent based scholarship, which waived my out of state fee, which is a lot of the reason I was able to stay at Clemson. And in doing so, like, I really got invested. I became studio manager, was working really hard at that. Me and my mom eventually were able to come to that, have that coming to Jesus moment where it's like, okay, I kind of see the validity of this now. Like, you're doing well, you're a studio manager, you're picking up clientele, you're getting internships for yourself. I'm starting to see the career path, and for her, if it's at Clemson, then it must be legit.
Right.
So that was kind of the beginning of it. I was working in and out of studio. So right upon graduation, I was still very much so into that studio space. Was working in Atlanta, during the summers for Track or Die Records, which is headed up by a producer by the name of Street Symphony. So got to do some really incredible work with him, with some of Rick Ross's camp. Um, he worked very closely with Lecrae, which is a big gospel hip hop artist. So I was kind of in a lot of different spaces and got introduced to a lot. Um, but over the course of time, and coming into that graduation space or that graduation season, there wasn't enough consistency there. As
Right.
far as money was concerned, et cetera. It was just kind of very spotty. So one of my professors was leaving university, and he ended up just giving me a call like right around the graduation time, and was like, "Hey man, I am leaving the university. I'm going to an integrator. I know you don't know what that is, but considering that you have a little bit of a computer science background, you got this audio background, I think audio visual programming might be a beautiful marriage for you. So if you're willing to come out and at least interview, see if you like it, there might be an opportunity here for you." So ended up doing that kind of against my will. I did love the studio space, but I recognized I could do it freelance if I wanted to. And the hours and just inconsistency of clientele with music sometimes, it's just, especially with the advent of home studios and project studios, you just kind of see that traditional studio space not having as many opportunities anymore. So um, eventually I interviewed for that job, got it, and that was the beginning of the entire world of AV for me.
Perfect. Look at you just getting in there. So I guess before we go in before we get any further into what you do, can you sort of explain the difference between an AV programmer versus like a regular computer
Mhm.
programmer, I guess? Because I guess in my mind,
Absolutely.
I see it as more something more technical with computers still, but AV programming seems like a whole new beast. Can you
Mhm.
could have sort of go in depth of what the differences are? And
Absolutely. So I think when we're looking at computer programming, oftentimes you're thinking about like web pages and web development, things of that nature. You're talking about, app development, different softwares. So I think a lot of times, even now, when we talk about computer programming, they'll kind of, you see the new title of software developers and things of that nature, so that they kind of, because the world of programming is so big and there's so many different industries that utilize some form of programming. I think the more traditional styles of your Java and HTML5 and things of that nature have kind of been siloed off in a
mm-hmm.
way to like software development, whereas it's a similar flavor when you get into audiovisual programming, which some people also refer to as control systems programming. um, where you are utilizing proprietary languages. They might have a flavor of some of your traditional syntax languages, like Crestron has, a C, C sharp, C plus background and things of that nature. And there are spaces for it, but there's still that proprietary flavor of it. So if you're looking at AMX, there's some syntax coding that you can do there, but it still has its AMX proprietary flavor. Same thing with Crestron, which is a logic symbol based programming up front, but you can get into the more traditional style of programming and the more syntax based stuff. But ultimately, control system programming or audio visual programming is in place to um, simplify your living, your communication across businesses, things of that nature. It's automation. So it's me coming into a space, utilizing a processor or hardware to communicate with different peripheral devices to simplify your lifestyle, which is, I want to get a lot of different electronics to be able to communicate across a network. That's essentially what's happening with audiovisual programming. So there is the back end development or the code, which is, what I'm utilizing within the processor to communicate out to my different peripheral devices. And then there's the front end, which would be like your, touch panel development and things of that nature. But that's kind of the difference. One is more so for, um, like I said, your web based kind of life. And then this one is more so the in your face, everyday kind of life, where, we're communicating, the back end behind Teams and, Zoom, that very much so communicative lifestyle, either that or the automation for your shades, your lights, your TV, the cool thing. So I think that was the delineator for me, which made audiovisual programming that much cooler. Like the things that I'm programming, I get to see in these different spaces, and I get to see a TV come on, I get to see the lights dim, shades go down. I'm very, I'm very much so part of this interactive experience. and helping the world to be able to better communicate and simplify lives. And that was important for me.
Nice. So speaking of you switching over to being an AV programmer, what was the first job like? What was that adjustment to the AV industry sort of like, and where was that first job at?
Gotcha. So for me, and I tell people this story all the time, I personally feel like I was lied to, right? When I came into my first job,
Oh
uh,
no.
because while I was told that there was like a programming component or that I had to be somewhat familiar with audiovisual programming, I was never necessarily told I would be doing it. So my first job in the industry, I was a video and control systems designer. At least that's what I was told I was going to be doing. I was going to kind of more so be designing and selling systems. But
Right.
within the first couple of weeks of me coming into this role, they sent me to programming classes, and that was very much so not what I wanted to do. But once because I'm like, I literally switched majors to avoid anything programming moving
Right.
forward,
I said we're trying to avoid all this.
all of this.
Yeah,
But
right.
once I got into it, I was like, oh no, this is cool. Like I'm seeing like, okay, got that touch panels, and I'm seeing like I'm controlling this space. I'm seeing different things happening. So the first company I was with, and of course, audiovisual is such a broad and big industry. And I think I had no idea what the AV industry was, but now that I'm here, I'm trying to expose everybody to it because there's so much career opportunity and potential.
Right.
And the first AV company, well, they were a theatrical systems contractor, so they did houses of worship, museums, performing arts centers, things that big systems, big live entertainment or live sound reinforcement type systems. And man, it was super rewarding. So my first project was this Union County AV barn, and it was kind of weird, but basically they did like, I want to say, like auctions for animals and things like that. So that was my very first small project, and I think the next one after that, after like, okay, he has some chops, was the Performing Arts Center for Wofford College. So that was my first style or flavor of AV programming, was those big live reinforcement type spaces. I had no idea about the world of conference rooms and things of that nature yet. I hadn't been exposed. Um, so that was the first big one, Wofford College. And man, once that Performing Arts Center, once I saw that come to life, that's what solidified it for me. I'm like, I'm good here. I like this. It was super rewarding. I was sold on AV after that.
What was the big adjustment joining this industry versus what you were originally doing before? Was it like trying to pick up on the lingo or the what the job entails, or what was like that shift like?
I think it was the world of AV in general because it was always there. It's just like silent, if that makes sense. It's like, even being in the Performing Arts Center that I was a student in, it's like, wow, AV was literally everywhere. There's digital signage on every wall. I'm like, a lot of these classrooms, these smart classrooms that we utilized had Crestron systems. They might have been more antiquated, but I'm like, oh wow, yeah. Like when I went up to this podium and I did this and I dropped the screens and I turned the projector on, like it was always there. It was just unbeknownst to me. Even just being in the theater itself. I mean, that's AV. It's live sound reinforcement, whatever the case may be. But I just had no. I'm like, yeah, speakers did have to get hung and wire was run and cables were. Wow, like yeah, this. I didn't know there was a job for this. It's just something that I guess is in your subconscious, but you don't really think about the fact that people make. I think we just silo it off, or people on the outside just think, oh, they hang TVs. That's what they do, not thinking about everything that goes into the development of these systems, the implementation, integration, install, I mean, just so much. So I think when I got introduced to it, it still wasn't quite clear to me what I was doing. It was just like, do you want this job? But then when I found out like all the opportunities, I'm like, man, I need to tell my people. So literally later on this month, I'm going back to Clemson just to do that, to introduce them to this space because I think a lot of them are looking for those live sound gigs and studio environments. I'm like, hey man, there's a whole world that will still keep you, you know, audio aligned or audio adjacent that really has some six-figure plus potential that you might not even know about, have no idea about. So yeah, yeah. So I mean, it was a shocker to know that it was just kind of like that silent career path that it was always there. But like you said, we all just we stumble into it. Nobody goes in knowing that it's a thing. So I'm trying to create, even with my old university, kind of a pipeline or classes to kind of get them introduced to this world that they have no idea about.
Yeah, I
You know,
would say that is the I like the phrase silent career path because I feel like you go to all these
it's a
career
silent career.
fairs and sort of hype up what AV is, but I feel like once you see it in action and see it in person, you're like, wow, this is
Yeah,
like a big industry. Like even now, since I started working here,
precisely.
being here for like almost a year or so, I like going to like different places and
Mhm.
restaurants and like think of like concerts. Like wow, the whole back end everything. There's like a
Yeah,
lot of moving parts that make this a thing. And it's just
so
like you
many,
said, like you just everything
so
is
many.
projector and everything has speakers, but you didn't know who are the people that make sure all this stuff runs. Who do you go to when it goes out? So
No,
silent career path is a that's what
not
I'd
at
like to
all.
call
And
that.
just yeah, yeah, it's a silent career path, and watching it the first time, I think, because like, obviously, when coming into the industry, I didn't really get to touch too much on those first few jobs. It was more of just be kind of being a student. And I think that watching like even the programming that goes into the different mixing consoles and all the different tie-in, I was like, man, this I never would have known. Like I have such a greater appreciation not only for the person that sits behind the board and mixes, but the person that integrated this system, the one that tuned this room, that did all the acoustics. Like I'm like, man, I just never really had that appreciation. But I mean, as good as a mix engineer can be, if the environment is not suited to be able to handle these performances or whatever the case may be, I'm like, somebody had to be here before you were here. And now that I see that side of it, it just opened up a whole new world, for me personally.
Has there been a point in your career where you felt like you've like found your footing within this sort of community and amongst the AV tweeps? Like sometimes people still feel new to an industry and they're like, I don't know if I'm really there yet. It may take some time, but I don't know if I feel like part of it. Have you found your footing and felt like you've been like a part of this industry?
I think so. I think that within that first year, I still wasn't sure. And I think, and that was 2016. I think that the time that it was solidified for me was actually 2018. So just to kind of go back for a second to that space and time when I was kind of working as an intern in the studios, and I didn't know it, but the actual owner of that studio in Atlanta kind of took note of me doing some of this work behind the scenes. So we didn't really have a lot of interface or interactions, I guess, with the actual owners of the studios. We kind of had a room that we had rented out for, a summer to kind of work with those artists. But in 2018, the owner reached out to me with an opportunity. And he was like, hey, man, I know you were here before. If you want to potentially come in and, show us some of your catalog, we think we might have a spot for you, with some pretty big clients. I know they were trying to form a partnership with Red Bull and some other high end clientele. And it was that one opportunity or that one time when I was like, I got to make a decision here, like about
Mm-hmm.
career path,
Right.
because this opportunity that I wanted for years is now presenting itself in 2018, where I can take a slot as an engineer, like a staff engineer, for this pretty reputable studio in Atlanta. And I went and I did. We had a great interview, if you will. Um, and I had to kind of sit in my car and make some tough decisions. And ultimately, I ended up turning down or not really moving forward with that opportunity because I think, like you said, I began to kind of find my footing in AV. And I think the thing too was I had to sit there and realistically think about the long term trajectory of what a career could look like. Not to say you can't be a successful mix engineer, but I lived that life. I did the 3 a.m.s to the 9 a.m., take a nap in the studio, get back up an hour later. It was a fun but a tiring lifestyle,
Yeah.
and not really knowing who your clientele is going to be, if these are questionable characters coming in. Like you just, it was
It was too
like,
like up
again,
in
it was
the
cool,
air.
but there was no structure to it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, there wasn't a lot of structure. So once I came into that corporate structure, and that consistent check that was going to come every 2 weeks, versus, oh, we didn't really have clients this month. Yeah, sorry. And whatever you get as an engineer, you're going to have to, some of that's getting taxed because it's got to go back to the studio. Oh, and it's got to go back to the equipment rentals. Oh, it's got to go back to the. So by the time I've done these sessions all night, I'm walking away with a couple $100 and maybe some credits. But realistically, no, again, that structure. So that's when I think I found my fitting, or my place in AV, was 2018, when I made that decision, and I was just like, I'm locked in. Like, this is secured for me, because I had to look my dream in the eye and be like, you know what, I gotta let my immediate want go for my long term want. My long term whatever. And I was still doing enough audio to be satisfied. It was just through a different conduit. You know what I'm saying? So I was finding the same satisfaction I got off of a polished mix I was having once I finished the system. That's still that same feeling of satisfaction, and it was still there, and then I was still doing a lot of freelance engineering on the side to be doing it enough. So I would say that's when, about 2018, when that opportunity got presented to me, and I was kind of like, I'm going to pass on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I knew.
So since working as a AV programmer for so long and working in different rooms and projects, both big and small, is there a specific, I want to call it, vertical that you like working in the most? Like, do you like doing more of the programming for like a live events, entertainment type of stuff, or do you like working on residential or conference rooms? What's like your favorite projects to hop on and work on?
Yeah, and I think that it's easier for me to speak on now, because I think I've seen like the three major different sides of the industry. So, like I said, first, for that 2016 right up to 2017 space, was that live sound kind of environment, theatrical systems programming. And then, I'd say for the biggest part of my career over the last 6 years, from 2017, I'm sorry, till 2021, that was strictly like the big corporate. And then now I'm kind of in that more residential or quasi commercial residential space, upscale living, like condos and apartments. And for me, I think the most rewarding was corporate. I think it was, to have left that imprint on some of the most major corporations and most recognizable brands. Like, for me, that was super rewarding. To be able to say like, oh yeah, man, I revamped these conference rooms for Coca-Cola, or I did the programming standards for Mercedes-Benz US International, or I got to do some work for CDC, whatever the case may be. Like, those are experiences that I'd say, one, challenged me the most. It grew me the most. Being in that corporate, fast-paced environment, that learn on the job kind of space. Like, some people don't like that, but that pressure really made me better. And for a few years, I really felt like I had something to prove. Like, being super young, most programmers being in the industry 10, 20 years, and me being in just a couple years and really making a space for myself at Whitlock and AVISPL. um, it meant a lot for me. Coming in as the junior guy, the guy with the year, 2 years of experience, and then by the time I left, like I said, having to have said that I left a mark in these, for these huge companies, and think like it was super rewarding. And I think that I like the diversity of it. No two projects were the same when it came to that space, where I feel like now I'm in a space where my projects are more consistent. Like I said, I'm doing condominiums, apartments, things of that nature, high end, but the scale might change, but the complexity doesn't really vary all that much. I mean, it's still a living space, right? So, whereas in corporate, I mean, the wants and the needs, the asks were so varied that I feel like, I missed that. That part was largely really rewarding.
Closing out our show here, for people who are looking to join this silent career path, and for people who want to like dip their toe in AV and start a career here, what advice would you give those people starting out?
I would say, kind of begin to get online and find forums and places like this and immerse yourself. But I think the way that it kind of starts, honestly, isn't necessarily on the install side. I think it's volunteering to run sound at, your local house of worship, or um, things of that nature. Like, I don't think I still think we lack those spaces where it's like, hey, AV is a career path. You guys should come check out our booth. Like, we know it because we can go to Infocoms or CD, wherever, places like that. But for somebody starting out, if you are aware, I'd say, ask for those opportunities where you can kind of start as an install tech, or shadow somebody, or look for internship opportunities and things of that nature. Shadow somebody. Like, I literally have somebody shadowing me now. He came in. to one of the more major AV integrators, and he was working as just somebody that was just stocking equipment. And we were good friends. He's like, I kind of want to shadow you as a programmer, and so now they're going to kind of give him opportunities to start in those spaces. So I think in AV, a mentor is huge. If you can find a mentor, like that's everything. Because I would say we live in one of those unique industries where I'm not going to say that they're not important, but this isn't necessarily a degree based industry, right? It is a, do you have the chops? Do you have the chops to do the job? Do you have the work ethic? Do you have the know how? Are you willing to learn and kind of work your way? Have you nabbed the certifications? I would say even more so than degrees, start looking at your certifications and what those things look like. And yeah, just find a mentor that can kind of guide you. Because right now, I don't think we have the structure that maybe some other industries have, where this is your cookie cutter path towards success in this industry. Like you said, we've all had to kind of find our way. So I think the best way for somebody new to find their way is to attach themselves to a mentor, so to kind of help them navigate, like, well, like you said, what do you really want to do? Do you want to be in the corporate space? Do you want to be in the live space? Because there's different areas of this industry. You may not do audiovisual programming at all, but there's design, there's installation, there's commissioning, there's project management. There's so many different avenues that you could take in this industry. So I'd say find a mentor. Um, and I think that mentor can kind of help you bridge your passions with, something that could really lead to a legitimate career for you.
Perfect advice to give someone. Thank you again for joining me on the AV profession. Very nice talking with you. Hopefully we have you on another podcast in some other form or flavor. Right now, the spotlight's on you, rolling out the red carpet. If you have anything to promote, anything that's going on with you or whatnot, now is your time to let us know. And how can people also get in contact with you as well? So the floor is yours.
Awesome, awesome. So, well, thank you, thank you. So right now, I am actually working with my current employer, Power Design, to kind of build some of that, like that platform for bringing in talent. I think right now that we don't really have that. It's not like a lot of companies, at least not in my experience. A lot of AV companies had that pipeline where they're going directly to universities and things of that nature. So that's something that I'm definitely working on. So like I said, later this month I'll be going back to my alma mater to kind of begin that process of, like, how can we have a direct bridge where we offer these internships directly to Clemson students and things of that nature. Also trying to build, networks for minorities in the industry and things of that nature, so that they have a place where they can kind of, find their way in as well. I think all of these things are important. So working on a lot of those things behind the scenes to kind of create those opportunities. So for me personally, if you're interested in some potential internships and opportunities, and not just for internships, but for potential employment as well, definitely feel free to reach out to me at my email. I'll leave it here. It's FT Lipscomb, Lipscomb @gmail.com. That's F as in Frank, T as in television, last name Lipscomb @gmail.com.
Alrighty, thank you so much for joining me. To check out this episode and more like it, head over to our website at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.